Adam Sandler has starred in a lot of films, some heartwarming, some cringy, some surprisingly great, and most goofy. But of these roles, which character is the most pure-hearted and which was the most evil? Hey guys, I'm Brad with Wicked Binge, and this is Adam Sandler characters, good to evil. For this list, we'll be covering the most well-known roles Sandler has taken on. As usual, we'll be starting with the most pure and noble character and working our way down. These characters are the good. First on our list, we have Longfellow Deeds. Deeds was seen as the kindest man in existence, always striving to help and offer an honest opinion. In fact, it was so difficult to find a bad side of him that they had to alter footage to even attempt to make him look awful.
Cat killer, cat killer!
A volunteer firefighter, a business owner, and a respected member of his community, Deeds donated a lot of his money to his town and others he encountered. He was a romantic that wanted to express to people how much he appreciated them and how much he cared for their well-being. Deeds was beloved by nearly everyone that met him, including the help that was used to getting stepped on. Deeds not only inspired Babe to follow her passion of journalism, but he saved her life when she came to apologize for tricking him. Though he was reluctant to trust her again, he went back to New York to set things right and make Emilio in charge of the company, as the man was meant to be.
How about $1 billion?
All right.
But Deeds was happy returning to a small town and spreading happiness in his own way, one greeting card at a time. It was a tough call because this character is so similar to Waterboy's Bobby, but we decided to give the silver medal of good to Hubie from the recent Netflix movie, Hubie Halloween. You can't say much bad about this guy, despite how poorly his town treats him. The man thanklessly spends every Halloween making sure that everyone in Salem celebrates in a safe manner. He treats everyone nicely despite never getting the same treatment in return.
We're out of food, I guess, yeah?
And even though he's clueless, you can't deny that when you pair him with this thermos, he's capable of a lot. The bronze goes to Bobby, the driving force of his football team. Bobby was sweet but simple. He dedicated a lot of time and effort into making sure people had clean water to drink after being raised with the story that his father died of dehydration. Though he was raised in a home lacking a lot, he offered to work for the Mud Dogs for free simply to help Coach Klein and the players. We had to place him a little lower because of his rage when taking out the opposing team. Bobby wasn't trying to kill anyone, but it led to him thinking how he behaved on the field was okay anywhere. And then we get moments like when he attacked his teacher.
It's okay to fight back. Coach Klein said I could.
But Bobby was also forgiving. He forgave his mother for her overprotective nature and lies. He forgave Coach Klein for lying to get him on the team, and he forgave the town and team for turning their backs on him. Even at the risk to his own well-being, he played alongside the men he saw as brothers and tried to get Coach Klein to overcome his old fears. Taking our next spot is Chuck. Though a womanizer for most of the film, this guy has a heart of gold. Now we have to bump him a bit lower due to the fact that he's breaking the law, lying about his marriage to Larry, but we do recognize that it came from a good place.
We're big time fruits.
Chuck had been there when Larry's wife died and had known Larry's children since they were born. So there wasn't a moment's hesitation when Chuck was told he was the one chosen to take Larry's kid should anything happen to him. And the whole experience led to Chuck helping another firefighter finally coming to terms with his sexuality and realizing how brutally the gay community can be treated. And on top of all this, he also got through to Larry about how unhealthy it was to hold on to all of his ex-wife's possessions. Chuck not only grew as a person, but inspired others to do the same. Next up on our list is top hairstylist Zohan. His methods are a little unusual, but he has some amazing talents and stands up for what he thinks is right. He was the only one among his friends and family that resented the fighting and wanted it to stop so he can pursue his dream. Though he was denied his passion and mocked for years, Zohan didn't slouch about any task he took on. If he was going to sweep hair, he was going to be the best at it. He brought up business to keep the space from being bought out by a man only interested in lining his pockets, even if Zohan did use some risky methods to do so. And in the end, he joined forces with the man he deemed his worst enemy to protect the people and neighborhood he had come to care for. Next, we're bringing up an animated role, Dracula. The Hotel Transylvania movies are a hit and miss with a lot of people, but he was a sweet dad, and he was also overprotective. Even after he lets Mavis leave the hotel, Dracula is reluctant to admit he fell for Erica and is in denial when it's possible his grandson Dennis isn't a vampire. But Dracula came through. He risked being burned to a crisp to get Johnny back. He put a stop to Vlad's plan to get Dennis's fangs to come out. He got over his fear of humans to help his fellow monsters have a safer and happier life. And he helped take out the Kraken that was threatening everyone that had been on the cruise. Though he had some issues, next we're placing Happy Gilmore. Known for his angry outbursts on the golf course, we feel we have to mention the reason he was doing it in the first place: to save his grandmother's house. Happy had a lot of resentment towards the world, but he adored his grandmother. The woman had taken him in when he didn't have anyone else, and did all she could to provide for him and raise his self-esteem. Though Happy attacked a mini golf clown and got his mentor killed, he learned how to restrain his rage and succeeded in coming through for the one person who loved him the most. Next up on our list, we have Paul Crewe, a disgraced athlete. He winds up in jail after a police chase resulting in an accident. Tormented by guards and prisoners, he's eventually bullied into coaching the prison team that will be playing against the guards in their yearly game, having to be forced to spend a week in the hot box until he caved. The purpose was to get the warden in a good light before the man ran for state governor, showing that he ran a prison that kept the inmates in line. But Crewe was quick to figure out that life for the inmates was worse than he thought. The prisoners not only had to deal with harassment from men who were drunk on power, but were often beaten and abused. And in many cases, these assaults were racially motivated. Crewe becomes motivated as the film goes on, pushing his players to practice even with poor equipment and a destroyed field.
The warden is trying to break our spirit.
Even when Crewe was threatened to get the guards a victory, or else be labeled as responsible to Caretaker's murder, he didn't back down. But Paul wasn't only responsible for leading a team to victory at the risk of his own freedom. He also made it clear that the men were stronger when unified, despite their differences. Taking the next spot, we have Tommy, also known as White Knife. Now, Tommy was a man torn between two lives, having a white father and a native mother. But he placed a lot of pride into being a noble man no matter his heritage. He stepped up to help his father and bring his brothers together because he felt it was the right thing to do. As soon as his father was shown to be crooked, Tommy chose to protect the people that had cared for him and had been at his side. Though his methods were fun to watch, we had to place Tommy lower for all the crimes he committed as he tried to raise the money for their dad's ransom.
We're gonna have to tie you up. We're gonna have to borrow your horses.
Next is Jim. Blended was another movie where Sandler played alongside Drew Barrymore, and the chemistry certainly helped make his character more endearing. The two bonded over being in the same boat, single parents trying to raise their children and manage a home. Jim was a well-meaning father that was always trying to place his children first, and even took to Lauren and her boys. After he realized he was in love with Lauren, he made sure to voice his revelation to his daughters, who quickly supported the idea. Infatuated or not, Jim was always going to place his daughters and their happiness above everything else, and we give a lot of points for that. Next up, we have a character that made an impression, Henry, the romantic lead in 50 First Dates. He began as your average playboy character, but things become more complicated when he falls for a woman reliving the same day over and over. But Henry isn't one to be swayed easily. He soon realizes how deep he's falling for her and makes an effort to understand her illness and help her cope with not having any short-term memory. He makes her tapes, takes her to hospitals, and even tries backing off when he thinks he's hurting Lucy more than helping her. He did all he could to make things work, and we see that his efforts paid off, with the couple marrying and having a child together. Still, deceiving a girl with a memory problem every day, despite good intentions, is a bit weird. With that said, we've arrived at the neutral territory. These characters fall in the gray area. Next, we have Michael from Click. This film was a cautionary tale for anyone too focused on merging into the fast lane to really enjoy the life they already had. For Michael, the entire time he's using the remote, he's emphasizing how much he loves avoiding anything that might be an inconvenience or distraction from his main goal in life, to move up and make a name for himself. But in the final scenes, we see the regret when Michael has to face seeing his children age without him, his wife grow distant from him, and his father passing away. Michael was able to right his wrongs by using the time he spent watching himself waste life away to create more moments with his family.
You look like you're having a crazy dream.
Next is Big Daddy himself, Sonny. Sonny didn't plan to be a dad, and he wasn't a very good one. He didn't have many rules to create boundaries, wasn't attentive, and didn't know much about nutritional needs for a child. but Sonny stepped up to the plate. He started to find a way to help Julian reach his potential. They bonded over assignments, read, and Sonny attempted to get full custody over Julian, only stepping down when he learned who the father really was. Knowing Julian would be in good hands, Sonny still stuck around as a cool uncle. Overall, he became not only a good dad, but a better person for this weird experience he was stuck with. Taking our next spot on this list, we have Skeeter. He was a man down on his luck that wasn't getting a lot of praise for the work he put in. So when he comes across children that are able to affect his life with the stories they help build, he finds a way to use them to make his life easier.
Yes, you said it. Okay, so it's gonna happen.
We don't like the idea of kids being used to get a free car, but we can see the temptation of getting everything the easy way after a lifetime of work and grime. In the end, Skeeter placed the children and their needs first, even though it meant losing his job and starting from scratch. But he was able to preserve his father's memories with a hotel that Skeeter felt would honor him, and got his happy ending with Jill. Next, we have a man who got a rough deal, Dave. Anger management was a relatable experience for many viewers. He tried keeping his cool when being confronted by a disrespectful flight attendant and got tased. He ended up in therapy with other people with anger issues, as well as a lunatic teaching the class.
So he's laughing at you.
I'm not laughing at him.
Though Buddy presents himself as a nice guy looking to cut Dave a break, he does the exact opposite. In fact, Dave's girlfriend, Linda, reveals that Buddy had been pulling the strings on everything blowing up in Dave's face, and it all had to happen as part of his therapy. While we do have to dock him a lot of points for his outburst, we understand what motivated him. Next, we have one of the fathers from Grown Ups, Lenny Fetter. Though he has become a success since high school, Lenny still faces a lot of obstacles. Reuniting with his old friends to spread Buzzer's ashes, Lenny's stuck facing his childhood bully, balancing fathering and being a good husband, and still being the provider he strived to be. The story's simple. Lenny's a man trying to enjoy life while also running himself ragged to make sure it stays as easy as possible for his family. We can't place him higher since there weren't any grand acts he did for his friends and family. Next up on our list, we have the infamous Robbie. He was a jaded man who sang for weddings, even after his own almost bride changed her mind at the altar. The whole ordeal leaves Robbie in a state of confusion as he tries to figure out who he is and what he wants in life. He begins to turn bitter about his career, becoming more aware of his abandoned dream of being a rock star. He takes up a job at a bank simply to impress women with the bank job and devotes himself to having more shallow relationships, not wanting another broken heart, but it leaves him feeling empty. Robbie comes back from this crisis, confessing his feelings for Julia and deciding to pursue a life of happiness rather than meaningless relationships he knew would lead nowhere. Robbie isn't a heroic character, but he's an honest one by the end of his journey. Next is one of Sandler's more serious roles, John from Spanglish. This was a tough one to place, but we had to drop John due to his inability to stand up to his wife. Deborah was emotionally abusive to not only John, but their children and anyone who worked for the family. But John stays silent at the way Deborah mistreats their daughter, encouraging her to take up unhealthy habits and trying to get her to have an eating disorder.
Shoot me if I ever become that hard to deal with.
John stands up for himself when he finds out his wife was having an affair. Though he gets a happy ending and is seen as a hero for his family, it took too long to reach that point, and he should have been able to speak up more for his kids considering how much he's shown in the film to care for their well-being. Though we will point out that those situations can be draining and tough to handle. John was able to overcome the hardships in his own way and cared for his kids, so they knew they were loved, and we will give him credit for that. Next on our list is someone who deserves more appreciation, Archie. Having fallen into a life of crime, he hurt the man he considered to be his closest friend, but his time with Colton proved to be beneficial, with Archie being able to keep them safe, pointing out dirty cops and aiding the officer he learned was an undercover cop. And the whole time Archie was given a rough time for accidentally shooting Carter, he was still trying to make amends and rekindle the friendship. He made his mistakes with his life of crime, but he made up for them. Finally, we've reached the dark side. These characters are the bad and the evil. Not to be confused with Dave of the previous listing, we have Davey from 8 Crazy Nights. There are going to be those that feel Davey needs to be placed lower on this list, but to be honest, Davey's misbehavior was the same as a drunk teenager. mooning, taking snowmobiles for joyrides, dining and dashing. Look, they aren't good deeds, but they aren't terrible crimes. And we learn that Davy only becomes bitter and unbearable around the holiday season, due to it being the time of year he lost his parents. He doesn't learn to cope with the trauma until he becomes close with others and is given a reason to see the bright side of life again. He took care of the old couple and helped taught basketball, showing the more positive side of his personality. Whether you like the film or not, there's no denying how painful it was seeing Davy finally break down into tears at being confronted with the final words his parents left him. Next up, we have Billy Madison, a classic comedy. This film has more dark humor than you may remember. Principal Anderson's Valentine's Day card, the weirdo with the gun subverting whatever plans he had to save the day in the end, a blackmailed masked wrestler that killed a man in the ring. Compared to a lot of the crazy that happened, Billy was okay, but he was still careless and spoiled, never appreciating what was given to him in life. But we give him some leniency since Billy was raised in an environment where he was coddled and nothing was expected of him. There were a few times that Billy tried to do good next to his fellow classmates, even embarrassing himself to spare a young boy the humiliation of facing his peers with wet pants.
You ain't cool unless you pee your pants.
But maybe don't teach kids that having accidents is trendy? In the end, Billy attempted to better himself as a person and realized running a company wasn't for him, as he still had a lot to learn. The silver medal of evil goes to the little devil, Little Nicky. This movie was ridiculous. Even with the sweeter moments between Nicky and Valerie, there are a lot of moments in which Nicky's devilish side comes out.
Release the evil.
But even the most evil on this list has their redeeming moments. Nicky was a bullied kid that grew up too scared to defend himself or step up to take over his father's role in hell. In the chaos of facing Adrian and his plot to take over hell, Nicky sacrifices his life to save Valerie and uses the light his mother gave him to defeat Adrian and restore the balance between good and evil. We get a glimpse of Nicky and Valerie able to live a happy life afterward, but their son possesses demonic abilities. We'll never know for sure if Nicky stayed an example of balancing dark and light, but we can only hope that he can raise his son to be a hero like he was. Then again, maybe he just taught his child to embrace the evil, as he'd been told growing up. He was a demon that thrived on others' suffering, whether he liked to admit it or not. His evilness is a requirement to balance the universe, and that's a good thing. Finally, at our last spot, the gold medal of evil goes to one of Sandler's darker roles, Howard. Uncut Gems was a film that stood apart from the characters Sandler is typically known for. Unlike them, Howard isn't a redeemable person. He likes to spend all of his time gambling and digs himself into a whole lot of debt. Desperate to keep himself above water, he decides to smuggle a rare black opal so he can sell it off. Howard burns a lot of bridges.
I have every intention of paying you back.
He claimed he wanted to be married to Dina, but was cheating on her. He tried to use Kevin Garnett as a business partner, but pawned his championship ring that had been given as collateral. And he placed Julia in harm's way to make another bet on the Boston Celtics. It didn't matter that Howard got all the money he wanted. He got shot by one of the men he crossed. Howard was a cautionary tale for anyone that thinks the easy way of gaining success is the best. Even if things turn out, you still burn a lot of bridges and make a lot of enemies before seeing any real progress. Howard was taken out not only by his greed, but the envy and anger from Phil, as he, Arno, and Nico were forced to witness Howard refusing their demands. Alright guys, what do you think? Were the most good and evil characters Adam Sandler has played? Let us know in the comment section. Don't forget to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist, where we break down the morality of the characters in your favorite cartoons, shows, and movies. But most importantly, stay wicked.